They shared the same bench for years without sharing a word. Every morning, like clockwork, he'd arrive first, a steaming cup of coffee in one hand and the morning paper in the other. He always sat on the left side, leaving the right side open. 10 minutes later, she'd appear, jogging into view, her ponytail swinging in rhythm with her steps. She'd cool down, stretch, and then take her place on the right side of the bench. For a solid 15 minutes, they existed in a shared silence. Two strangers, bound by a simple wooden bench in Cedar Park. He was a creature of habit. His name was Arthur, a retired history professor whose life had become a quiet collection of routines. The bench was his morning ritual, a bridge between the solitude of his apartment and the gentle hum of the world waking up. He knew the exact shade of her running shoes. Vibrant, almost defiant, blue. He knew she always listened to music. The white earbuds a permanent fixture. He'd often wonder what she was listening to. Was it fast-paced rock to match her stride, or something calmer, more classical, for her cool? He even created little stories in his mind. Maybe she was a musician, or a dancer, or a doctor on her way to an early shift. He knew the small, thoughtful way she'd tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. But he didn't know her name. He'd never even heard her voice. Her name was Clara, a graphic designer who worked from home. The morning run wasn't just for exercise. It was her escape. It was the only time she truly felt disconnected from the screens and deadlines that defined her day. The man on the bench was part of that escape. He was a constant, a landmark in her daily journey. She noticed how his hands, though wrinkled with age, turned the newspaper pages with a certain grace. She saw the way his eyes would crinkle at the corners when he read something amusing in the comics section. Sikayadim, the professor in her mind. He seemed so wise, so calm. His presence was comforting, a silent guardian of her morning peace. Sometimes, she'd catch his scent on the breeze, a faint mix of old paper, fresh coffee, and a subtle, clean aftershave. It was the scent of mornings at Cedar Park. For 3 years, this silent dance continued. Seasons changed around their bench. Spring brought cherry blossoms that dusted the ground in pink snow. Summer baked the wood, making it warm to the touch. Autumn covered it in a blanket of red and gold leaves, and winter would often leave a layer of frost that Arthur would carefully wipe away from her side before she arrived. They had weathered storms together, huddled under the same large oak tree, still not speaking, but sharing the shelter. They had witnessed countless moments from their shared perch, a child's first steps, a young couple's first kiss, a frantic dog chasing a squirrel. They were silent observers of life, together, yet apart. The unspoken rule was simple: we do not speak. The silence was their language. It was comfortable, predictable, and safe. To break it felt like it would shatter something delicate and precious. What would they even say? Nice weather we're having? It all seemed too small for the years of shared silence. One Tuesday morning, Arthur arrived as usual. He had his coffee, his paper, and a small, nervous flutter in his chest. Today was the day. He had rehearsed it 100 times. A simple good morning. That's all it would take. He sat, opened his paper, and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. An hour went by, and the coffee in his cup grew cold. The right side of the bench remained empty. Clara didn't come. Arthur felt a pang of disappointment so sharp it surprised him. The park felt hollow, the morning incomplete. He told himself she was probably just busy, or maybe she'd changed her routine. It was bound to happen eventually. But she didn't come the next day, or the day after that. A week turned into 2. The empty space beside him grew larger and colder each morning. The silence was no longer comfortable. It was heavy, filled with absence. His morning ritual had lost its meaning. The coffee tasted bitter. The news seemed dull. He found himself staring at the empty right side of the bench, a canvas where his imagination had once painted stories, now just blank wood. The vibrant blue of her shoes was a ghost in his memory. He realized with a jolt how much he had come to depend on her silent presence. She was the anchor to his morning, the punctuation mark at the end of his solitude. After a month of empty mornings, Arthur knew he couldn't just sit and wait anymore. The risk of never knowing felt far worse than the risk of breaking the silence. But how do you find a person whose name you don't know, whose voice you've never heard? He had only one clue: her run. He started changing his routine. Instead of just sitting, he began to walk the path she always took, hoping to cross her path somewhere else in the park. He asked the man at the coffee kiosk if he'd seen a woman with a ponytail and bright blue running shoes. The man just shrugged. He felt foolish, like a detective in a novel with only a single, vague clue. His quiet world had been disrupted, and he was left adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Meanwhile, Clara's world had been turned upside down. Her mother, who lived in a city 3 hours away, had fallen ill. Clara had dropped everything to be by her side. Her days were now a blur of hospital corridors, worried phone calls, and sleepless nights. The morning runs, the park, the bench day, all felt like a lifetime away. But in quiet moments, sitting by her mother's bedside, her mind would drift back to Cedar Park. She'd think of the professor. She wondered if he noticed she was gone. Did he wonder where she was? She missed the comforting stability of his presence, the simple, unspoken companionship. It was a small piece of normalcy she clung to in the midst of chaos. He was a stranger, yet the thought of him brought a strange sense of peace. After 2 long months, Clara's mother was finally on the road to recovery. Clara drove back home, exhausted, but relieved. The first thing she wanted to do, the very next morning, was go for her run. She needed to reclaim that piece of her life. She needed the familiarity of the path, the crisp morning air, and the silent company of the man on the bench. As she approached the park, her heart beat a little faster. Would he still be there? Or had he, too, moved on, finding a new routine? She saw the bench from a distance. And there he was, sitting on the left side, just as he always had. A wave of relief washed over her, so powerful it almost buckled her knees. She finished her run, her steps feeling lighter than they had in months. She did her stretches, her eyes fixed on the familiar figure. Then, she walked over and sat down on the right side of the bench. The silence settled around them. But this time it felt different. It was filled with unspoken questions and a shared sense of relief. Arthur's heart leaped when he saw her. He had almost given up hope. He folded his newspaper and placed it beside him, his rehearsed good morning forgotten. He just looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time without the shield of the newspaper or the pretense of looking away. He saw the tiredness around her eyes, but also the same strength he'd always admired. He had to say something. Anything. He cleared his throat, the sound loud in the quiet morning. He turned to her, a small, tentative smile on his face. "I'm Arthur," he said, his voice a little rough from disuse. I saved your spot." A beautiful, radiant smile spread across Claire's face, lighting up her tired features. It was the first time he'd seen her smile directly at him. It was worth the 3-year wait. "I'm Clara," she replied, her voice softer than he'd imagined. "It's nice to finally meet you, Arthur." The silence was broken, but nothing shattered. Instead, something new began to build. They started talking, their words tumbling out, filling the space that silence had occupied for so long. They talked about the weather, about the news in the paper, about the music she listened to. It was an eclectic mix of everything. Each turned it out. He learned about her mother, and she learned about his life as a history professor. They discovered they had both been lonely, finding solace in their shared, silent ritual. The bench at Cedar Park was no longer just a meeting spot. It became the foundation of a friendship. Their mornings were now filled with conversation and laughter. The silence hadn't been an ending. It was just a very, very long beginning. And for both Arthur and Clara, it was a beginning that was well worth the wait. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that warm the heart.